understand that we don't teach you anything and we don't tell you anything. What we do is point toward and ask you to look to where we're pointing to see for yourself. But no matter what you've believed or what you've been told, there is nothing that anyone can ever give you, and there is nothing you can ever get. And we're not talking some newfangled idea or anything like that. If you look in all the ancient traditions, you'll see it's the base of them all. In Hinduism, for instance, they call it Advaita. Advaita translated means non-duality. And they try to describe non-duality by saying it's one without a second. And they put that one without a second on because even the idea of one implies that there could be other than one. So to cancel out any idea that there is anything other than that, they say it's one without a second. Now you'll see the same thing in Buddhism expressed in slightly different words, where they'll say it's non-conceptual, ever fresh, presence awareness. And they add on to that just this, nothing else. They're pointing out that is all there is. And there is anyone in this room who is not aware of being present right now, or that presence awareness is right where you are. There might be all sorts of concepts going on inside it, but realise none of those concepts could take place outside of that presence awareness. Christianity and other great traditions say it's omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. And they're not talking about three things, but three aspects of the one. Omnipresence means total presence. Omnipotence means total power. And omniscience means total intelligence. Three aspects of the one. So you realise they're all pointing to the one thing. And what they're pointing out there is there can be absolutely no duality whatsoever in non-duality. Got the idea, if I do this, repeat this mantra, do this retreat, read this book, I will become something at some future time. So if you've got the idea you're going to become something in some future time, you've moved away from omnipresence, from total presence, into conceptual belief that there is such a thing as time. So that's why we say here right from the start from the fact that you are already that, whether you know it or not. And then if you start from that fact, you don't have to waste time trying to search to find something. All you've got to do is see what's coming up and obscuring that understanding or knowing. What thought, concept, idea or image or belief is obscuring it. And all you've got to do is look into your beliefs and drop your beliefs, and you're left with that, which is the base of everything, with everyone right now. That's another thing we point out here, that belief is not the actual. You're looking, we've got this belief about this, that and everything, so many beliefs we have. But your dictionary definition of belief is an unquestioned acceptance of something in the absence of reason. Acceptance of an alleged fact without positive knowledge or proof. Now put your beliefs to that test and see whether they'll stand up. We've taken on this belief that we are individuals, separate entity, persons. Another thing we point out is that the false cannot stand up to investigation. When you investigate some of these beliefs and look into them, you see that they will not stand up. Got this belief that you are a person, a separate entity. Where did that come from? Well, look at the word person. Where does that come from? Didn't the ancients, when they were formulating these words in other language, come from persona, the mask? Pointing out we've got this mask of identity on ourselves, this conceptual image. And we're taking that mask to be real. Or another way of looking at it is per meaning true and sona, sound. But this idea through a sound, a thought. So that is a vibrating pattern of energy, that's all it is. We believe we are this body-mind, a separate entity. But if you had a look at that, are you this body? Or can you find a point anywhere in this body where you can say, this is where I begin? Look as hard as you like, and you can't pinpoint any particular spot where you say it all started here. And what's this body made up of? You see, this body's made up of elements. Made of earth, water, fire, space. Now, if you think you are a separate entity, separate yourself from those elements if you can. Stop breathing for a start off. Take the air out of your body. See how you'd last with being separate from that air. Take the water. Your body's 80% water. Take the water out of your body. See how long you last. Take the fire at the body temperature. Get off the earth if you can. Get out of space. When you look at it closer, you'll see you can't be separate from these elements at all. And what are these elements? They can all be broken down to subatomic particles into pure energy. So this body is nothing but a vibrating pattern of energy. You look at this manifestation, you'll see that this manifestation is a dualistic manifestation. Because it couldn't manifest if it didn't vibrate dualistically. Could there be day without night? Silence without sound? Look at it close, you realise there couldn't be any of these things if it wasn't vibrating dualistically. That's why the ancients told us this manifestation is Maya. It's illusion. It's just a vibrating pattern of energy. And you are no different from the manifestation. You can't say you are this body. What about this mind? When we are the body, mind. Well, you know my body, my mind. You also know my coat, my car, my house. Are you the coat? Are you the car? Are you the house? You know damn well you're not. So can you be my body or my mind? And if you think you are mind, show me a thing called mind. Can anyone come up with this and say, this is my mind? There is nothing near substantial you can say is mind. And what is mind after all? When you're thinking silently without any words, you'll notice there's a subtle movement going on, a subtle vibration. When it comes out as word, like these words are now, what are these words? They're sound. And what's sound? Sound's a vibration. And isn't a vibration a movement of energy? So this thing we call mind is nothing but a vibrating pattern of energy also. And watch and have a look and see the way it vibrates. You realise the mind being a vibration, the boundaries and limitations we've put upon it are the word. And Shakespeare told you that a couple of years, 100 years ago, and he said there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And we're thinking in words, concepts. And when you look at that, you realise there's no words you've ever spoken or ever likely to speak that hasn't been learnt. Every word you've spoken has been learnt or picked up along the way somewhere. And look at a little child when it's first born, for the first couple of years of its life, it hasn't got any words. Seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, functioning quite naturally. Hasn't got any words, it's not discriminating anything, it's not relating anything. Just seeing things spontaneously, naturally. If it's attracted to something, he'll like it. If it doesn't like it, he'll push it away. Hungry, he'll howl. If he's happy, he'll gurgle. He hasn't taken up the word, so he's got no problems at that stage. So you can't really say you are this body mind. Again, looking into this thing we call mind, see how it functions. And realise, oh, it's a wonderfully useful instrument. It's very mechanical in the way it functions. Watch your mind and see if it functions any other way than this. If you're not in the past, which is memory, you're in the future, which is imagination and anticipation, or somewhere within that range. And it's always vibrating constantly in the interrelated opposites. It's either good or bad, pleasant, painful, happy, sad, loving, hating, positive, negative. And the boundaries, limitations we put on are these words. Past, future, present, pain, happy, sad. They're the limitations, the boundaries we put upon that which is unnameable. So we've got this body-mind idea. I don't use the term God here because we can get confused with that term. For the simple reason we all come from different traditions or different backgrounds. Some of you might be atheists, some of us agnostic, some of us Christians, some of us Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Jews, or whatever your traditional belief is. And if I start talking about God, you'll immediately relate it to your traditional belief, and so we'll not see what we're pointing to. But I use the term intelligence energy, and you've got to understand that that is just a concept also. That is not it, just a conceptual image you put on it. And when I'm talking about intelligence, I'm not talking about your intellect, because there are different degrees of intellect in this room. Some of you are a lot smarter than I'm ever likely to be. Some of you mightn't be quite so smart, but you notice there's different degrees of it. The intelligence I'm talking about is the natural state. Have a look out there in nature and see there's out there in nature there's galaxies forming, planets moving around, Earth going around the sun, seasons coming and going, tides coming in and out. Doesn't that imply that nature itself is suffused with an innate intelligence that's enabling these things to happen spontaneously and naturally? And you are no different from nature. You are nature itself. And look at that and you'll see it's that same intelligence that's breathing you right now. It's beating your heart. It's growing your hair in your fingernails. It's digesting your food. It's replacing cells in your body. What are you doing about that if you think you're running the show as a separate entity? You realise you can't do anything about it at all. It's happening spontaneously and naturally. And have a look at that. When did this body begin? Unless you looked at this stuff, you'll all tell me, well, I began at birth. But can any one of you actually remember your birth? And you realise you can't remember your birth. You can only go back so far, to about 2.5, somewhere around that age, when the capacity of reasoning started to form in that body. And that capacity of reasoning is the capacity these human patterns have, which other animals, birds, insects don't have that particular capacity. They have other capacities, more developed than some of our capacities are. Like a bird, for instance, has the capacity of seeing. It has better eyesight than you and I will ever have. It has the capacity of flying. We don't have that natural capacity. But through the capacity of reasoning, we've learned to build ourselves eyeglasses if our eyes are failing, or binoculars or telescopes. And to be able to fly, helicopters, planes and things like that, it enables us to fly. We haven't got those natural. So this capacity of reasoning can be very useful. Also, being a vibration, it's self-destructive. Because it's that same capacity of reasoning that tells me I'm not good enough, or I'm fearful, or I'm anxious, or I'm unhappy, or miserable, or depressed. A dog has a capacity of smelling, a sense of smell much better than yours or mine. Tigers, animals and that, things like that grow stripes, spots in their fur, a natural capacity. Do you think the little tiger cub, when it's born, say, well, I better grow a few stripes in my fur, it'll make me a better predator? Or the leopard, so I'll put in some spots when I get up in the trees, mingle with the leaves. Are we a natural camouflage? Chameleons can change colour, and blend on all those other insects and things can do all these sort of things. Doesn't that imply that all of nature is suffused with this innate intelligence? Well, go back and look. You can't remember your birth, but we'll go back to your father and your mother. See where it began. That animating life essence, that intelligence energy that pattern shaped and formed your father, enabled a sperm to form in that pattern, a little microscopic particle. You can't see it with your naked eye. That same animating life essence, patterning, shaping, forming your mother, enabled an egg, an ovum to form in that pattern. Now that egg was suffused with an innate intelligence because it knew to attach itself to the wall of the uterus. The sperm was suffused with innate intelligence because it swam to the ovum. It wasn't just floating around accidentally, it knew what to do. It knew how to swim Doesn't that imply intelligence? And it knew what to do. It swam to the ovum and it's penetrated that. When that penetrated, those two microscopic particles coming together, the blueprint that was in them enabled that cell to double and redouble, and the blueprint was there, began to form the little embryo, the little fetus that you are today. What were you doing about it then as this believed in separate entity? I mean, someone would better grow a hand or a lung or a heart. And you didn't have a brain, so how could you think any of these sort? But that innate intelligence knew what to do and realised it's lived you and grown you ever since. So what is the problem? The problem is this capacity of reasoning that we're developing. When a little child is about 2.5, this capacity of reasoning developed, and his parents fussing around him, telling him, you little Johnny, you're a good little boy, you're this, that and the other, and don't do this, do that. So he started to learn words from his parents. He learned words like I, or me. And he started to reason, this little Johnny they're talking about, that's me. Well, that is I. I am little Johnny. And we're, up till that time, he's seeing everything out there just as it is. He's not discriminating or not separating from any of it. It's all just a spontaneous, natural functioning. Now he's reasoning, that's not me. Well, that's not I. So when he sees that's not me or not I, with that comes insecurity and vulnerability. The sense of separation comes upon him then. And with that sense of separation comes the insecurity and vulnerability. Now he feels insecure, isolated and vulnerable. And what happened in the old days, when the little child loved a warm and loving family, or doesn't he still today? With that warm, loving family, you feel much more secure and a lot less vulnerable. And what happened in the old days, when families form into tribes, the bigger and stronger my tribe, the more secure, less vulnerable I am. And isn't that going on to this day? Instead of forming into tribe, we form now into nations. And nations go to war with nations, trying to, because of that belief in security, vulnerability, never sure what the nation next door is going to do. So I've got to defend myself, or to make sure I'm going to be more secure, I'll take them over. And so it goes on, just through nations, but through companies, work and all sorts of things. Watch it and see it going, because of this idea of separation, the insecurity and vulnerability. Where prior to that we were functioning naturally, spontaneously and inevitably. You can't do much with I or me. Just a couple of words. But what we've done to it, we've added on to I or me events, experiences and conditioning. Other words, concepts, ideas. I am Bob. How do I know? Well, my family told me and I'm Bob. I'm an Australian. I'm a good fella or not so good. I've got low self-esteem. I had a bad childhood. I've got this addiction or something's wrong with me. I'm depressed. All these concepts are added onto that I thought. And I form a conceptual image of what I believe myself to be. And that conceptual image is constantly reinforced day in, day out without being questioned, and it's seemingly solid and substantial. So you can't do much with I or me, so what do? We add to that I or me events, experience, conditioning and form a mental image, what we think we are. Now everything then becomes relative to that image. Instead of seeing things as is, now we're relating. And as we pointed out at the start, all problems are problems of relationship. All relative to. And it's not just a male-female relationship that we take so much interest in, it's relating to anything at all. It's all related to this self-centre, this ego, me. And see how that works. Something comes up, instead of acting spontaneously like we did when we were younger, now we're related to the mere memory. And I like it. Something comes, this is good, I like it. And we don't want the good things to go. We want to be the good things there all the time, not realising this manifestation is a dualistic manifestation and it's transient. It's constantly changing. So the good things, no matter how much you hang on to them, try to keep them there, they're going to move, they're going to change. Like, have a look at it, this thing so wonderful thing will become very boring after a while, very ordinary, or it'll die or move away. But it'll certainly, you don't want it, it'll certainly change. But we don't want the good things to go, we want the good things to be there all the time. So what do? Try to keep them there where we resist it. And don't you realise that any resistance is conflict? As soon as you're resisting something, you're in conflict. And any conflict you are in is disease. Aren't you uneasy if you're anxious, fearful, angry, unhappy? There's an uneasiness or a dis-ease there. Same thing comes up with something we don't like. I've had this before and I don't want it, so immediate resistance again. Immediate disease, conflict and disease. And this is what's going on with us all the time. See it in your thing. Look at all this psychological suffering that's constantly going on with you. It's all because of this resistance and conflict of relating it to it. Relating to it. So, well, there are problems of relationship. And me is the cause, the relating to this believed in separate entity, this individual, is the cause of it all. And the effects are the anxiety, the fear, the depression, all the rest of it. Isn't that what so-called karma is? Cause and effect. As I say so-called karma, because when you look at it, it's just a lot of crap. What happens if you're not relating to this me? If you're not relating to this me, the cause, and ask yourself, can there be an effect without a cause? Well, you don't have to be a road scholar to work that out. If it's not being related to a cause, where's it going to fixate on? Where's it going to stay? Like every thought, feeling and emotion, it's constantly changing, it'll transient, it'll move on. But we haven't recognised that, haven't seen it, so it hangs around and we beat ourselves up. And we knew that when we were kids, when you said sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. And somebody gave you a belting with a stick, you still start to heal up, the bruises start to. Somebody calls you a few nasty names, calls you an arsehole or something like that, and how long do you carry that around for? You might carry it around for days, weeks, years. So we beat ourselves up with the word. And that's what we point out here. It doesn't have to be so. You can do it if you like, nobody's going to stop you. And no matter how hard you try by looking for the answer in the mind, because that's the thing we find out, you will never find the answer in the mind. The nature of the mind is to vibrate. And look at it, see the way it's vibrating. Good, bad, pleasant, pain, happy, all the way. So you'll never find the answer. And you should know that, because haven't you been searching something for 10, 20, 30 years or more? And you're intelligent people, you haven't found the answer. Why haven't you? Might it just dawn on you, maybe I'm looking in the wrong direction? I've looked in the mind and done all sorts of antics and trips and read books and looked at this and that. I've never found the answer. Never found a solution. Had some good experiences, good visions and all the rest of it. Never got the peace. And that's another thing, people talk about peace of mind. You will never, ever, ever get peace of mind. Purely and simply because the nature of the mind is to vibrate. That's why the ancient called it the peace that passeth all understanding. When you're not vibrating, you're not fixating on that mind, there is a natural peace there. When there's no chatter on them, there's a stillness there and an emptiness. Never found the answer in the mind, you'll have a look and say, well, what way is there out of the mind? Because every way you look will always be in the mind. Every way you look will always be in the mind. Try to look at it this way, that way. And it might dawn on you, you might realise there's only one way out of the mind. If we're not going to find the answer in the mind, what way is there out of the mind? Isn't that full stop? What happens if you pause a thought right now? And anyone can pause a thought right now. What can you say without a thought right here, right now? Can you say it's good, bad, pleasant, painful, loving, hating, positive, anything at all about it without a thought? You realise, no. I can't say anything about thought, but what's happening? Have you disappeared? Have you fallen apart without that thought? No. You're still hearing, you're still seeing, tasting, touching, smelling, heart's beating, hair and fingernails growing. There's so much going on in that animating life essence, but the thought has stopped for the moment. Realise in that moment when the thought has stopped and all these other things that you are prior to the mind at that time. And you'll hear a lot of these spiritual services, you've got to go beyond the mind or prior to the mind. And people try with the mind to go beyond the mind and they can never get there. Don't you see why? Trying to wash away blood with blood. It'll never happen. But pause a thought for a moment and see what's going on. And see the difference between the pure intelligence that's breathing a beating heart and the thinking. The thinking has stopped, but to realise that all those other things that are going on even when the thought has stopped. So you really see that the mind, the thinking or the mind, is not the answer. It's not the true thing that we put so much belief and so much in. It's the life essence itself that's doing that living. And that same life essence that's animating, pattern, shaping and forming this manifestation. We pointed that this manifestation is a dualistic manifestation. Couldn't be any other way. But realise that the manifestation hasn't formed an ego. It hasn't formed a self-centre. Hasn't got nothing to relate to. So day doesn't fight with night. Silence doesn't fight with sound. Winter doesn't fight with summer. Still doesn't fight with movement. They come up, move around and move on. No fixating, no sticking to it where they can hang around. Each will come up, take its turn. And then you realise if that happens there, the same thing would happen here if you're not relating to this me of memory all the time. The spontaneous functioning will still go on. Not fixating on it, it's not going to be a problem. So you see, me is the cause of all your problems. So wouldn't it be imperative that you would investigate and have a look and see what I'm saying here, whether I'm talking bullshit or whether it's the truth or not? We say the ego is a fiction. Because you're told in the scriptures you've got to sublimate this ego, you've got to stamp on it, you've got to push it undercover, get it out of the road, do whatever you can to get rid of it. And the more you try that, the more it is there, because again, it's the ego trying to get rid of the ego and it won't happen. If we say it's a fiction, have a look and see. And we ask you to look along these lines and see for yourself. Everybody is seeing right now. Isn't that a fact? When you opened your eyes this morning, did you say, now I'm going to start seeing? Or was the seeing there immediately? And isn't it that same seeing been going on all day? Isn't it the same seeing we had yesterday, last week and last year? We think it's a different seeing, but it's not. It's the same seeing, but the content has changed. And the content of the seeing is constantly changing, but the seeing itself doesn't change. The same with the hearing. Woke up this morning and the hearing was there, and if somebody had called you loudly in deep sleep, you'd have heard it. So that hearing was there all the time. And recognise it's the same hearing we've had all along. Same seeing, same hearing, but the content has changed. Now, the seeing and hearing are going on. Ask yourself this. Does my eye tell me I see? Now have a look at that. You can if you want, if you don't want to. Who cares? I'm not going to worry about it. You see, my eye doesn't say, look at this, Bob, look at that, well that's good or that bad. My eye doesn't say anything at all. It can't say anything. But the seeing is happening through the eye. It's the instrument through which the seeing is happening. And it's translated by the thought, I see. Now remember, this thought I see, we haven't just left it as I see. We've added onto this thought I see events, experiences and this conceptual image. It's me, Bob, the Australian, with all its faults, all its good sides, its bad sides and everything else. This conceptual image I've got now thinks it has the capacity of seeing. The same with the hearing. My eye's not saying listen to this, Bob, or my ear's not saying listen to this or listen to that, that's good or that's bad. My ear can't say anything. It's the instrument through which the hearing is happening, and again it's translated by the thought. I hear. And this thought I hear is not just a bare thought. It's again what I've related to this thought, this conceptual image. Now I've got an image, me, Bob, that thinks it's seeing, it's hearing. But ask yourself this. Can the thought I see actually see? Shut your eyes, look around the room and tell me what you can see with a thought. You realise you can't actually see anything with a thought. Put your hands over your ears and see what you can hear with a thought. You realise you can't hear anything with a thought. Now wouldn't you realise from that this thought I see, this believed in thought ego, the thought I see can't see. The thought I hear can't hear. That's all the ego is, this thought up entity. The thought I am aware is not your awareness. The thought I choose can't choose. It's not the choice maker. What do you recognise from that? That this thought up ego hasn't got any substance or any independent nature of itself. It cannot stand on its own. And see that. Take that life essence out of that body now. How many thoughts does a corpse have? Thought's got the voice, the corpse has got the voice box, it's got the heart, the lungs, the ears, it's got all the organs there. But without that animating life essence, that intelligence energy, it can't have a single thought. And now we've moved away from it and taken on the belief that there is an entity here, an individual, a person, that has the capacity of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, doing all this functioning. And you look into it, you realise it can't do anything. Why don't we give credit where credit is due? It's this life essence that's functioning in this universe, causing the earth to roll around the sun, tides to come in and out, seasons to come in, that's breathing and beating out. It's doing the lot. You, as the entity, are not doing anything, never could, never. The pattern that's formed, and that life essence expressing through it, enabling to do all that. Without that life essence, that pattern is useless. Just like your computer, got all that information on, haven't got any power on, what can you get out of the computer? So this is what we point to, and I ask you to look along those lines. And we talk about, we're seeing from this self-centre, that all this being not related to the me, all this psychological suffering drops away at a cause. It's only me that can be fearful. It's only me that can be anxious. It's only me that can be full of self-pity or unhappy or depressed. Me is the cause of all my problems. And I've just pointed out that the cause is a fiction. So if I'm not relating the problems to or believed in me, what's going to happen to them? Now I worked on these problems for years. And just like peeling the skin off an onion, you go through one, you get another one and go on and go on. It was constantly and ever refreshing and coming up again. But without that self-centre, I've been free of all this psychological crap for years. I'm not talking bullshit here, because there are others who have come along and listened to this could tell you the same thing. In investigation, it's everybody's right if you want to do it. So that's what we point to, and ask you to look along these lines, see for yourself. Got any questions or any doubts?